Hello, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at a fight between two of the highest ranked fighters in Russia, Petr Vasilyev and Dmitry Usovtsev. Now, this is a very interesting fight because both fighters are actually from the same club in St. Petersburg. They know each other very, very well, and they know each other's styles very, very well, which meant that this fight was a bit of a chess match. We get to see a level of creativity that you don't often see in high-level HEMA combat. This was from a tournament we hosted this past summer. Vasilyev is on the left with that snazzy black and white decoration, and Usovtsev is on the right with black and yellow, the colors of his club. Now, one difference to note is that Usovtsev is older, more mature, and more orthodox in his style. Vasilyev, by contrast, is the dynamic young contender. Now let's take a closer look. In our first fight, both fighters step in and take rather unorthodox guards. Usovtsev with a high preem and Vasilyev with a modified close sixth. If you're curious, this is what a sixth parry looks like, by the way. I'll get back to this later. This sets Usovtsev up for spiraling Moulinet strikes, and eventually Vasilyev is able to take a parry repost undercut. Next, Vasilyev steps in with a more or less orthodox guard in tierce, while Usovtsev invites him with a low preem. Stop, look at their hands. Both of their hands are exposed, but whereas Usovtsev is clearly opening as an invitation, as a bait, Vasilyev seems to be accidentally leaving his outer hand exposed. Vasilyev knows better than to take the bait, but Usovtsev can clearly see that exposed hand, and he wants it. Throughout the rest of this skirmishing, he's going to look for that hand. Usovtsev parries and then threatens a high line repost, prompting Vasilyev to go into a high preem guard. But when Usovtsev's attack is not followed up, he flourishes and goes back to that funny sixth guard. Usovtsev looks for a beat, which, by the way, is the appropriate move against the high line guard. And he threatens the outside, going for another wrist shot. Finally, he thrusts to the inside and catches the exposed bit of Vasilyev's glove and actually gets stuck under his bell. So what can we learn from this? I chose these clips because they show how expert fighters skirmish with each other, how they react to probing attacks by flexibly switching between their guards, and also how they see and attempt to exploit openings.
So we're talking here about en-gardes. What is an en-garde? Well, the en-garde is the default stance, the very basic stance that you should take when you are engaging with your opponent. There are lots of different kinds of en-gardes, and you'll see all kinds. You'll see people go something like this, something like this. Sometimes you might see a high guard or even a middle guard. You see this a lot with Russian fencers, I've noticed. And even in some styles, you see a guard like this in the middle. Not all guards are made equal. Some guards are objectively better than others, and I'll explain why. So the first thing you need to understand about an en-garde is that the point of it is to block off specific attack zones.
Now, one point of clarification that I need to make is that guards are not parries. Parries are defensive counteractions to specific attacks. You see your opponent making a specific motion, and you anticipate a specific direction of attack, so you move your blade to block off that attack. That's a parry. A guard is something a little bit more preemptive. It's a defensive posture that you adopt in order to block off specific zones of attack, in order to facilitate your own defense, to make your own parries, make it easier for you to parry other attack zones, or prevent your opponent from attacking in ways that they are most comfortable.
It's basically you picking a certain parry that you prefer, that is optimized for your opponent, for example, and you are going to hold that guard to prevent attacks toward a certain direction of your body. So, for example, my preference is this one. This is Barbizetti's en-garde. And Barbizetti was a late 19th century Italo-Viennese fencing master. And he emphasizes the thrust. And so the en-garde is elongated a little bit low. He talks about doing a cone of defense. And this allows me to parry and then thrust directly. If you hold a specific zone, a zone defense, you are limiting the number of potential attack directions. It simplifies your thinking. You don't need to consider attacks from this side. You don't even need to move your guard if there's an attack coming from that side. All it is one simple move to the other side, across your body. Don't forget.
So this is a fundamentally different way of thinking about defense. So rather than focusing on parries and responding to your opponent's attacks, you can use these techniques to first become aware of your opponent's tendencies and your own defensive vulnerabilities, and then adjust, change your defensive posture in order to facilitate your own defense.
So how do we do this correctly?
There are three things to be aware of. First, your hand position. The second is your blade position. And the third part is your body position. First, your hand. Your hand needs to remain protected. So, for example, if I have a guard like this, or a guard like this, that's not going to protect my hand. It's very easy to make a direct attack to my hand or to my arm. Ideally, whichever guard you choose, it should be turned outward so that attacks from this to this zone are defended. Barbazetti also does a little bit extended outward to the side so that any attacks within this whole area are deflected to the guard. One mistake I often notice new fencers make is that their blade position is too vertical, too high, for example, like this. Now, this is a weakness because it's not strong enough in its opposition to attacks cuts from this side. If I hit on the forte, you're going to be parried. But if you hit on the weak, the débellé, it's just going to fail and you're going to get a mal paré and a cut to your head. So don't hold it here. Don't hold it here. Hold it like this, like this, like this.
One more point I forgot to mention is that it's often advantageous to keep the point of your blade pointed toward your opponent's face. Now, this can leave you a little bit vulnerable, for example, to blade actions like beats. So you need to be prepared and comfortable doing disengaging, if that's what you prefer to do.
Okay, so I said before that not all parries are made equal. Some are better than others, and let's talk about that.
With some of the older English styles, you see a guard in the middle. It doesn't do anything. It's not protecting either side of your body. Your whole arm is exposed. It's right here is a very dangerous position for you. It's not a very good en garde for the purposes of one-on-one dueling. Now, this is a different topic. From my impression, my interpretation, a lot of these English sources are based upon the combat needs of a battalion or a regiment of soldiers standing in a line fighting against an enemy. And so, of course, there are different contexts where different styles make more or less sense. But in the context that we are doing, which is one-on-one dueling combat fighting, it really only makes sense for you to be in a specific set of forms. So next, let's talk about body position. So one difference you'll notice, for example, the guard difference between longsword or rapier is going to be a little bit wider. And that's because you need to be able to move laterally as well as forward and backward. In saber, we don't actually care that much about side-to-side movement, and this depends on the style. I know, for example, in earlier saber, Polish style, for example, it does matter a little bit more. But for the most part, you find what's comfortable for you with a forward and backward movement. Your distance, the distance between your heels should be about the width of your shoulders. It should be comfortable. And this is the most important, the key. This is the key, is you need to bend your knees. You need to be low, like lower than you probably expect. You don't need to be like super low, but you need to be low enough that you can shift very easily, that you can step very easily. By keeping your legs bent, it means that you're able to spring into an attack more easily. Now, the last thing that you need to be aware of is that there's no perfect on guard. No guard is going to protect everything. You need to choose which zones you want to defend. And it shouldn't be a static defense. It should be an active defense. So, for example, if you are fighting an opponent that is only attacking to your wrist or to your arm, it would make a lot more sense to have a guard where you are pulled back, because they keep aiming for this zone. You can just take it out of reach. Or, for example, if you have an opponent that always attacks high, you can just keep a high guard like this. For example, this maybe. A high guard, a hanging guard, is perfectly viable in certain circumstances. It's not going to be perfect for everything, and that's the point. No guard is perfect against every opponent. In fact, it's a very good idea to be flexible and transition between guards as you need to counter and react to the other person's attacks tendencies, I should say.
Now, of course, this all requires that you be cognizant and reflective about yourself and your opponent, which is challenging for the best of us. But if you can manage it, this will dramatically improve your performance.
So that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave a like or a comment. I appreciate all feedback. And I hope you'll take a look at other videos that I have in this series.